Fiction, science fiction, horror, fantasy, crime, LGBT, thriller.
You have now entered the House of Mystery.
Welcome back into the House of Mystery. I'm Al Warren. Mr. Dave Martino is in the house.
I'm here again.
Yeah, doesn't end. You know,
I know.
It's the month of haunts.
Yes, that's why I'm here.
That's right. And now we have a returning author here with us, and he's got a new book out. He's written with someone else, and it's called Last Call, South Florida. It's a history of 1001 LGBTQ friendly taverns, haunts, and hangouts. So remember this, haunt, so it fits. The book is out now, and the author is Rick Karlin, so thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Wow. So, Rick, it's been a while. How have you been for the last while? I guess writing this book and other things, everything going good for you?
Yes. This is my second book in the series. The other one was Last Call Chicago, which we were very pleased became a #1 in LGBT studies on Amazon. So we're hoping the same happens for this one.
I'm sure it will. Now, listen, so what is, let's give the reader so they know if they don't know what's going on. What's the premises of these books and what's going on with Last Call South Florida?
Well, Last Call South Florida is similar to Last Call Chicago in that it's a kind of a combination encyclopedia, coffee table book, history of LGBT bars, hangouts, you know, sometimes restaurants that also had cabaret rooms, speakeasies, things like that were LGBT friendly or, you know, what we used to call gay bars back. I felt it was important to document them because so much of LGBT history started in the gay bars. You know, people, of course, many of them know about the Stonewall riots, which are kind of the start of the sort of modern gay liberation movement. But there were also similar events in San Francisco and Los Angeles and Chicago. And those all started in bars or on the West Coast, the Compton cafeterias, which were a hangout after the bars. People would go to these cafeterias, 24-hour cafeterias, and hang out. You know, even before Stonewall in New York, there were at Julia's, a bar, they would order a drink and they'd say, and I'm a homosexual, because it was illegal to serve a homosexual a drink. So they were and even though Julius was a gay bar, they wanted to make a statement about it so that they were, you know, creating a situation. So that was part of it. The other part is, for years, gay bars served as sort of community centers, de facto community centers for the community, because we didn't have gay and lesbian community centers or LGBT studies groups in schools. And there certainly were no, you know, LGBT support groups in high schools and things like that. So when you went to the bars, that was when you were with people of your own kind. So many community organizations actually got their starts in gay bars. You know, a bunch of people sitting around coming up with an idea, jotting it down on a napkin and actually starting it. Some of the gay support organizations, such as Chicago's Howard Brown Health Clinic, started out that way. Gay Men's Health Crisis in New York started that way. It was people sitting around talking about what they could do about something that was happening to them, especially during the AIDS crisis. Many organizations started in the gay bars and with the support of the bar owners. So I felt that's where so much of our history lies. It's an important thing to document. And, you know, gay people nowadays, because of the things we fought for, they don't feel like they have to go to a gay bar. They can just go out with friends and feel comfortable anywhere being who they are. In many places, I'm sure in, you know, rural Tennessee or, you know, Wyoming, that may not be the case. But in most big cities, they feel comfortable doing that. So gay bars are kind of becoming a rare breed. unless you go to, a large city, you're not going to find very many gay bars anymore.
Right, right. So on doing the research on this, how did you go about it? Like, how did you go find, let's say, everything in South Florida and go back in time? Because you go back quite a bit of time. So what's your research process on something like this?
Well, the first thing I did with the Chicago bars is I worked with Suki Delacroix, who wrote kind of the definitive history of Chicago's LGBT history before Stonewall. And he and I worked together. And then when I moved to Florida 10 years ago, and decided to write the Florida book, I found Fred Fejes, who is a historian. He works at a Florida university. He's emeritus now. He's retired. But as a history professor, specializing in LGBT history. So, and I went to he was doing a lecture on bars and their importance in the community. So I went to his lecture and went up to him afterwards and showed him my book on Chicago and said I wanted to do something similar to that for South Florida. Would he be interested? And he was. So we started working together. So he wrote sort of the historical introductions. And then what I did is we have here in South Florida, we have a wonderful resource. It's a national resource, the Stonewall National Museum, Library and Archives. And they have publications from all around the world, LGBT publications, including the old Dameron guides, which were the LGBT travel guides, going back to the 1960s and early 70s. So what I did is I started with the Dameron guides, and I created a spreadsheet and just went through and listed every gay bar they listed in South Florida, going from Palm Beach down the coastline all the way to Miami and then around to Key West. After I created that database, then I went through all the old LGBT publications and sort of filled in a little bit of background about what the bars were like from the ads and the write-ups in the magazines about the bars. And then we divided the book into sections, each one representing the counties. So there's Palm Beach County, Broward, Miami-Dade, and Monroe, which is Key West, which encompasses Key West. So Fred wrote an intro for each one of those counties, talking about the history of those counties, and then we have the listings for each of the bars. Along the way, I found a lot of old ads and pictures from the bars from the newspapers, and Fred had some old pictures as well and newspaper clippings, and all those are included in the book. We have hundreds of vintage ads and newspaper clippings and photos. We have like a picture from a Mr. L. Carroll contest or something like that, from 1978. And, it's amazing how you could just really pick the pictures up and move them in time. And except for the haircuts and the physiques, not much would change. What was considered extremely well built in 1978 would be considered scrawny by today's standards.
That begs the question, why South Florida? Why did you decide to put your focus there for your second book?
Well, that's where I live now, and I kind of know the area. I'm currently working on my third book, which is Boston, which my husband and a bunch of our friends went to school there and lived there. So that's the next focus I'm doing. After that, I'm kind of done because I don't really have the context for those other cities. But my hope is to inspire other people to write, a Last Call Kansas City or a Last Call St. Louis and do their own book because it really is important for us to document this. And every major metropolitan area has this story to tell. And the information is out there. I mean, I could go and do a list of bars, but I wouldn't be able to do the color commentary for the bars because I don't really know them. Even doing Miami was hard for me because I live in Fort Lauderdale. So I know Fort Lauderdale, I know Miami a little bit. I know Palm Beach and I know Key West. But, for example, some of the bars in Miami had different addresses. And because I don't know Miami that well, I didn't realize that, that Lejeune Avenue was also Ninth. Those are things that you have to know the city well enough to know. Or to know that, for example, there was one in Fort Lauderdale. There were 4 bars that were all in the same building but had 4 different addresses. Well, the building was a square city block, and each bar had an entrance on another street. So that's why they all had different addresses.
Wow. Well, it'll give you an excuse to go out and find them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but the bar is no longer there. So, it's like, okay. But by interviewing people, I got the gist of the story. That's the thing, too, is we interviewed dozens and dozens of people for this, people who had been around. Some of them have already passed since we interviewed the book. But we interviewed people that were around in the 60s and 70s and 80s for these stories. One of my great sources was Edison Farrow, who was a big party promoter in Miami in the 80s and 90s. He was a great source of information.
So, did you learn anything new that surprised you about Florida and about the old haunts and hangouts and stuff like that, or the history that you didn't expect?
Well, I found out that Florida was a lot more liberal than I expected it to be. After Prohibition, there were a lot of drag bars down here, and it was very common for socialites to invite a drag queen to entertain at their parties. These drag clubs, they were called femic bars, were very popular with society. The publisher of the Miami Herald at the time got a bug up his butt about it and decided to try and create a problem. And it turned out there were absolutely no laws against cross-dressing in Florida at the time. So they really couldn't do anything. And the police had kind of a laissez-faire attitude about it. They were like, look, at least now we know where all the perverts are and we know where to find them. So it was not a big, they really didn't seem to care. After researching the Chicago book, where there were these extreme laws in Chicago about cross-dressing. You had to have at least 3 items of clothing relating to your gender on you at all times. That was a very interesting thing. And as a matter of fact, that one of the bars, La Paloma, some of the people in the community were complaining about it so much because the people were, I guess, having sex in the parking lot and things like that. The drag queens were going in and out, and some of the neighbors were not very pleased with that. And they complained to the police, and the police said, look, there's nothing going on in the bar. We can't do anything. If we catch them in the parking lot, we can arrest them, but that's it. And so the neighbors called Ku Klux Klan and had them burn the place down. So, the police were hands off on the bars. And I was really surprised about that.
Wow. Yeah, that's so. When you put the book together and stuff, and this is the second in the series, what were you hoping that people get out of it? Were you looking for something that readers would take away?
Well, I'm hoping that people realize that they weren't just places that people went to drink. Yes, unfortunately, there was a lot of alcohol abuse. And, that did happen. Part of that happened because people were, desperately unhappy with their lot in life. Part of that was because they were not accepted. It was not because they were inherently bad people or anything. Which came first, the chicken or the egg, their alcoholism because of their discrimination or, whatever. But, so the bars, did tend to help foster that. But, there were many people that went and did not have alcohol problems in the bars. So that was not an issue. The thing I hope is that people realize that bars served as a community gathering space and that they were more than just a place to hang out and drink, and that they served as a place for people to be together with their own kind and form a sort of community.
Yeah. When you say you talk to a lot of people, it says that you talk to like some of the people that built it, the entrepreneurs, entertainers, bartenders, go-go boys, and all that stuff. There's still a lot of people alive that you talk to that were, let's say, celebrities in the bar scene.
Oh yeah, a couple of the good sources for me were Nikki Adams is a trans woman. Back in the day, she was a drag queen. She now identifies as a trans woman. And Elektra, they were performers in the bars back then. Elektra even had her own bar at the time for a while. Yeah, they still do shows at a bar here in Fort Lauderdale. They were just saluted at an event called something like Legends of Drag or something like that. It was quite an event, and they are still working it. I mean, Nikki Adams works harder than anybody I know. She's working like 6-7 nights a week. So. Wow.
Time to retire. Take a break.
Well, I don't think they gave 401ks back then.
No.
So, and I doubt she paid into Social Security either. So, she's probably got to keep working.
Yeah, totally different experience and stuff like that. And what did you get any funny ones that you sort of were kind of thought were hilarious when you put them, because you write some of their experiences, right? Some of the what they kind of.
Oh yeah, Nikki was very funny. She would talk about some of the places that she performed. One, there was a bar where the stage was behind the bar, and in order to get close to the customers and get their tips, they had to jump from the stage onto the bar and then work the bar, like walk up and down the bar as they were doing that in high heels, no less, And when you think about it, a bar is only about, 18 inches across. So they were jumping across a 2-foot expanse and landing on that. And then Elektra told me that at one point she bent down to take a tip, and the feathers on her dress caught fire from a candle on the bar.
Oh, boy.
And then one time Elektra was doing a show, and she was in a chair that was going across on a pulley across the ceiling, and it got caught in the middle of the ceiling, and she had to sit there for like 20 minutes until they could get it working again. So
that's great. It sounds like a fun book and lots of good stories and stuff. So now, are you doing social media? Do you do a website of your own? Do you do any sort of a thing that you'd like readers to interact with you?
I haven't done my own website. Shame on me for not doing it. I was a computer teacher in my real life, so I should do that, but I just haven't. I am on Facebook. I don't do the other social media. I just haven't done it. It's laziness more than anything else. I'd rather be in Stonewall doing research than doing that. I'm a very happy queen with a spreadsheet, let me tell you. I love doing the research part of it. It's my favorite part.
Well, that's good. That's what you should do.
Yeah.
Well, we can put that up, and we can put the Rattling Good Yarns website up, because they can find all the book locations and stuff like that. So that's all good.
Right. If there's anybody in South Florida listening, we're going to have a book release party at Hunter's in Wilton Manors on October 15th, 6 to 8 p.m. And we'll have the book there available, and you'll be able to get the authors to sign it.
Well, there you go. Fantastic.
And you won't have to pay shipping.
Yeah. And maybe the author will sign my chest. You just never know.
Whatever other part you want.
Oh, there you go. You see, I'm going. Well, the book, Last Call, South Florida, and it's a history of 1,001 LGBTQ friendly taverns, haunts, and hangouts. So get this great history, and again, the author's been with us, Rick Karlin. So thank you for being here.
It was my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rick.
This has been a production of the House of Mystery Radio Show. To find out more about our show, guests, or hosts, go to our website at houseofmysteryradio.com.